attention. So, all right. So we're going to talk about what can you do with a Flexshaft. Let's see, where should we start? Let's start by putting those on. Everybody got glasses? Yes. All right. We're going to start with polishing, and apologize, Austin. Some of this is going to be review for you. But I'm going to talk first about silicone abrasives, I think. Okay, so you've got a Flexshaft. What does it do, and what can you do with it? Let's start with handpieces. Okay, so you've bought the motor. You've got your foot pedal. Everything's plugged in. Normally, what comes with the Flexshaft is going to be what's called the number 30 handpiece. Number 30 is a industry standard. It kind of cumbersome, but at the same time, the reason why everybody uses it is that the end of this is what's called a Jacob's chuck. Opens very, very large. You can use almost anything. You can put any type of attachment in there. You can put even fairly large drill bits that aren't really made for jewelry. You can even use those in there. I have put small wooden dowels in there. You can do 1,001 different things. So while what it lacks in comfort, it makes up for in versatility. If you're working, with a lot of stuff and you're moving really fast, it's not exactly the quickest handpiece that you could work with. And you can do two different things. You could, get two different motors. If you have a couple extra $100 sitting around and nothing better to do with it, you can buy an extra motor if you like. You can also go to what's called a quick change handpiece. Quick change handpiece. Pros, it's very, very fast to switch from one to the other. No, we'll put that on the blooper reel. All right, so when you're working, and you go from one thing, you switch to the next. How about, and it just slides right in. You throw the switch, and then that's stuck in there, and you go on. There's no looking for this thing, which everybody loses all the time. Just buy a 6-pack of these and sprinkle them all over your house because you're going to lose them constantly. All right, so what's the downside to this? Well, you don't get the size adjustment that you would with the Jacob's chuck. You get 3 30-second. Now, there we go. Could you let Scott in? You can only use 3 30-second, which is one of the reasons why they make something called a uniform shank drill. That way you can have different size drills and they all have the same size shank, and then those slide right in. So you're stuck with 3 30-seconds. The good side of it is that 80-90% of this industry, everything is all 3 30-second size shafts. The other thing that you have to remember when you're working with a quick change, something must stay in it at all times. You cannot leave it empty. If you leave it empty, it will lose the ability to grip, and then it becomes a paperweight. So don't do that. Actually, we'll leave that in there until I can find the flying piece of metal. Now, here's one from my past. This is about an 80 some odd year old handpiece that they're still making today. And this is a slimline handpiece. Nothing fancy. The versions that they make today now use wrenches to tighten and open them. This, I can change the collets out. You're not going to get it very large, but you know, you have some leeway. Its claim to fame is that you can slide the shroud right down over the tip of it, and you would then use it very much like a pencil. So you have extremely fine control over how you use it. I love this handpiece. Yeah, Forta makes a version right now. Very nice. Okay, and this is what's called a hammer handpiece. Now, rather than, you know, a rotary tool, this is a reciprocating hitting motion, hence the hammer part of it. This one may not be readily apparent what you would use it for at first, but and you're not going to use it as often, but it is extremely useful. Now the tips for this, you're not going to use a burr. You're actually using a series of what's called anvils. Little tiny striking surfaces. Think of them nothing more than a very, very tiny hammer. And they've got a threaded shaft on them. Put them right in the tip here. Okay, then this little mystery bar slides right through the hole. Tighten it down. Put it somewhere you'll remember it. And now now I want to take a stab at what you'd use that for. What do you think? Jason?
Closing gargles.
It's like you knew. All right. So now this one's already closed, but I'll show you. Now, the other day I made this on Saturday. All right. So this is what's called a hammer bezel. Literally because you use a hammer to close it. So when you're working with a stone, and this one was, at least on my budget, fairly expensive. And when you are hammering right there, it's a little nerve-wracking. Most stones can hold up to at least a couple accidental hits, but it's not something that you want to do. So in comes the hammer handpiece. And I have chosen a wide, slightly rounded tip, and what I'm going to do is basically change out using a hammer, which is dicey. And you can also change the force and the speed. The force up here and the speed by the foot pedal. And then you just go around. And what would normally take you forever and a lot of cussing and a lot of very nervous moments. And now I have a ton of control over it. And it makes that a really simple, easy job. All right. Now, all of the hand pieces will come with either straight, except for the number 30. I never really thought about that. But they'll either come straight or with a duplex spring. Duplex spring is just an extra, very, very flexible joint between the part that you hold down here and where it connects to the shaft up here. And it allows your hand a lot more movement when you're working. You could say that really the only downside would be that there's an extra duck down here, extra joint down here, or extra little shaft that goes right through this part right here. And sometimes that might break. It's incredibly rare, but that might be about the only downside. That, and it adds about an extra $15 to $25 onto the price, or more. So, but okay, here's a quick tip. This is a major pain in the neck, especially when you're getting started, is putting the handpiece back on. You'll see that there's a little tiny flange on here, a little tiny tab on top, and inside you'll see a little, there's nothing in it.
Thank you.
Not even with my glasses.
Basically, it looks like that. This tab has to slide into that open C right there. And as you can tell, it's difficult to see that. So what you do, basically just slide it into that portion, make sure that it's close, and then you just step on it a little bit. As soon as you see this portion start to turn, oh, no, and it just slides right on. So you don't have to look in the dark and figure, okay, if I turn it 8 degrees to the left or 3 degrees to the right, then it'll work. If you just slide it on while it's running slowly, you'll do okay. All right, so what else can the Flexshaft do for you? All right, so you've got this motor and you've got a foot control over it. So they have designed certain tools that allow you to plug this motor into another tool, so then you can use the power from that to drive something else. This is one that I use pretty much all the time. This is a little belt sander. All right, and this allows you to do like this particular ring. Before I soldered the setting on, I worked the entire flat edge out here, and then both sides. I did all of that on this guy right here. That allows me to do very crisp, flat sanding, and okay. Got a sharp corner right there. Say I wanted to round that other corner to match that one. All right. I'd imagine that you're familiar with how long that would take you with a file. So. Done. And you can also, if you have steel tools or anything like that that you need to shape, there are times when I've knocked the tip off of something, or I have dented a blade or something like that. You can also work on and you can sharpen things, shape things, do whatever you want. Very, very handy. Let's see, what else we got? This guy. Now, I have a drill press at home that's a very nice, it's one of the little DR300s over there. I love it dearly, but it is way too large to live on my bench. It lives in a pile of schmutz over on the side of my bench, and I have to dig it out every time I want to use it, and then clear off a space and then put it up on my bench and then put it away once I'm done.
Does that come with the recipient that comes with this, or you put your own in there?
You put your own in.
Okay.
And then you just drop your number 30 in there, and then you've got basically a little drill press / semi-milling table if you really wanted to. Drill presses aren't always the most useful tool, but wow, when you need one,
To cut a nice straight.
yeah. When you want something absolutely perpendicular to whatever it is that you're putting under there, when you're drilling the stones out or drilling the hole out for the seat or anything like that, it becomes a big deal.
This also highlights the fact that you should always have a number 30 handpiece around. Because if there's a gadget that's made for the Flexshaft, this number 30 will fit it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know,
Good
be
to
it,
have 2, 3.
yeah, I
just
mean,
2 there.
every matte wax tool we sell, the 30 handpiece fits into it. The jump ring cutter, the 30 handpiece fits into
Yeah.
it.
I think currently I have 3 of them.
And I will point out that you should, if you're gonna get a 30 handpiece, honestly, spend the money and get the Fordham one.
Yeah.
Because everybody makes it for the Fordham handpiece, which the knockoff ones are sometimes the same diameter, sometimes they're
sometimes they're
not.
longer.
Could be a little about,
Yeah.
So just to keep precision, stick with the. other
Yeah,
one.
because we had a rash of, well, not a rash, but we had a whole bunch of hand pieces that we bought, and they were.
Yeah, let's not talk about your rash.
Less than a millimeter larger than the number 30 hand piece, and they didn't fit anything.
Yeah.
Because you just never know.
And all they needed was sanding, but suggesting to somebody that they take their brand new handpiece and sand a millimeter of aluminum off of them, they didn't seem to want to hear that answer. So, all right, what do we got next? Okay, you can also add things to it, there's a speed limiter. It's not a common tool, but every now and then, especially, you'll have certain tools that you can't use above a certain RPM. Some of the abrasives, some of the polishing buffs, things like that, you can operate at, full 18,000 RPM or above. You can use this to limit it to a certain degree. It'll be kind of like a governor. Here's an alternative. All right. Speaking of running things far too quickly, this is what's called a micromotor. This is an alternative to a Flexshaft. Let's use your analogy. This is the pickup truck of the jewelry industry. This is a very tough, resilient piece of equipment that can do a lot of things, has a lot of power behind it. This does many of the exact same jobs, but it is a far more refined, more precise instrument. This has a lot of torque, and it is nice and exact, but when you get down to a certain very, very small scale, it is not the smoothest operation. Although honestly, it's a Fordham and it's made incredibly well, so it would be very hard for us to tell. But if you're doing things like carving waxes or doing bone carving or wood carving or something like that, on very, very fine detail, you will notice that it's a little jittery. All right, so this is what's called a micromotor. This is also a quick release. You have to keep something in it at all times, and you're only able to really use a 3/32. You can change out the collet on the inside, but it is a bit of a hassle. But what it does do is it runs extremely fast with very little vibration, and it's extremely stable. Now that's wide open at about 32,000 RPM.
Wow.
So, yeah, and that's about twice as fast as that. Now, there are certain things that you do not want to do with this. If you were to put one of these guys in there, it would immediately fly apart into a giant cloud of fibers. A lot of these, if like the silicone abrasives, if you were to put one of these in there, it would just snap and fly off. You would then have to use the speed selector, cut it down to about halfway, and then drop it down to a nice, sane speed. All right. I have used these for carving waxes and things like that. They are fantastic machines. I don't have the money to spring for a second operation, but the speed, especially stone carving, opening it up all the way at 32,000, and then it just cuts right through stone beautifully with a diamond burr.
And also, if you're doing shows or anything like that, it's a lot easier to carry around
True.
and set up than
True.
a flex shaft and a hanger. And
Oh, real quick, just if anybody's using a flex shaft and you have to use the hanger with it, if you try to run a flex shaft with the motor sitting on the table, or you can get away with that to some degree, but if you try to bend the shaft too much and you keep it up for any length of time, it will start to, basically too much friction on the shaft on the inside, and it will heat up and it put a little too much pressure on it and break it. So you can get away with this, but I wouldn't do it for any length of time. Okay? So try to keep it nice and relaxed. You want it at a certain height so that it comes down. You've got one smooth bend into where it's coming into your hand, and that's good.
I do have a flex shaft for my Dremel. I'm still like having sleep.
All right. Let's talk about what should we do next? Should we do burrs, different shapes and what they do? Or let's start with polishing. All right. So I have got what's called a satin finish on this ring. And this is, it's basically a lot of different little tiny scratches on there that all make up a very non-reflective surface. So I guess we'll basically consider this, this is what it would look like when you're done sanding it and filing it. So I'm going to take that from a satin finish up to a mirror finish. Although I don't really have time to do it properly, you'll have to just use the power of your imagination. All right. We're going to start with, got these guys. These are silicone abrasives, and this is silicone with an abrasive inside, and as the silicone basically wears away, it exposes more abrasive. So you start with the white, and it goes white, black, blue, pink. The white is very aggressive. If you've never used one before, I really recommend trying it on a piece of scrap metal beforehand, just so you get a feel for it. All right. All right. I accidentally nicked it a little this morning. There we go. All right, and then you can go on the inside. See, the beauty of the bullet shape is that you can use the tip of it to get into the corners and smooth things out, and then you use the broad side of the barrel for your flat surfaces. And should you wear the tip of it off, you can resharpen the abrasive by use only your junky files. Don't use a good file for this. All right, and then just run it sideways, and then that brings it back up to a real nice point. And then you can go back and get into the nooks and crannies again. we go.
You can tell the difference already.
Yeah.
So would each of those give a different finish?
Yep.
Okay.
Each one is designed to remove the scratches that the previous one put down.
Okay.
So
Yeah, basically, the scratches get smaller and smaller and smaller until you can't see them anymore.
and and don't skimp on the steps. Now, I don't have time to take you through all of it, by the book. But if you really take your time with finishing and you do every step completely, it makes a huge difference. A fully finished piece of jewelry is amazing. If you're going to do satin finishes, and I'm going to put the satin finish back on at the end of this, take it all the way to a mirror finish before you go to a satin finish. Don't try to use a satin finish to hide scratches or something that you didn't want to finish beforehand. If you place a satin finish over a mirror finish, it looks incredible.
Yeah. Any finishing step is only as good as the step before.
True.
And also, if I may interject about the steps he said, I hear it from a lot of people where they'll say, oh, well, if I'll just do the coarse one and then I'll do the fine one, it's, I'll just do it extra. It takes you really twice or three times as long to try to do it with a really light step. But if you went step by step by step, it gets easier and easier and easier for the abrasives to work.
Now,
Oh wow.
now that's just with the silicone abrasives. Honestly,
That's awesome.
some people are okay with the silicone abrasives and they'll leave it at that. If you go on, and we'll do the polishing agents next, that will take it even farther. Now that still has scratches on it, and really it's kind of a pale shadow of what it should be. But
When you're using the silicone abrasive, do you think the finish is like, I've used them and I've used the bristle discs and I've used the compound. Is it because the silicone is really pressing against the surface? It's working really well to, because I feel like when I use my radial bristle discs, I get it very shiny but not as reflective.
right, you never will, not with the bristle discs. Okay, let's talk about a quick misconception with the flex shafts. Something that I see over and over and over again that people do is too much pressure, especially with the silicone abrasives. People get impatient and they want to get it done, and by pressing harder, it builds up the friction, which then builds up the heat and the pressure, and then that breaks down the silicone abrasive faster, and honestly doesn't get you anywhere any quicker. If you keep the pressure light and you keep it moving the entire time, you never want to rest in any one spot with a silicone abrasive, or else it will dig a pit which may not be apparent right away, but as you work farther and farther down the production, it starts to stand out more and more. Keep the pressure light and keep the speed low. You really do not need to open this up all the way very often. I would rather you, especially when we'll talk about the cutting burrs here in just a second. If you're working with these, if you open it up all the way, it's almost uncontrollable. And if you try to press, it will tear off into your finger or leave a deep gouge across your project, whatever it is. Just keep it slow, keep it light. All right.
On your foot pedal, does it have a rheostat or something like, so you can only go so far, so you can?
It is.
I know
Well, it's described as a rheostat, isn't it? The
Well,
pedal
yeah,
itself.
Your foot pressing it, but is there a limiting
You
switch?
can
hook it up
put
to
one of
that.
those in line, and then basically it would just plug into the back, and then this would plug into the wall, and then you can set it just like this knob up
You
front.
said it's half speed or something.
Right. If you didn't want it to go above a certain speed, say you didn't want it to go accidentally,
Right.
yeah, your concentration wavers for a second after.
Muscle spasms, you know.
Yeah.
Sneeze.
Daydreaming,
Yeah.
yeah.
Dog jumps on you. Cat.
All right.
That's my problem. Stay away from me.
Yeah. I don't let them in.
I have to. My God. My puppy knows how to get in, anyways. If I shut the door, we have one of those the handles, and he jumps up and he's like,
It's
"Keep."
figured it out.
I'm like, "Hey." He's like all proud.
My girlfriend got locked in the other night because the cat pulled the doorknob out of the door, and she did not know how to
Oh no.
pop the door open. We have an old house, and it's got the little glass doorknobs that constantly fall apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to talk about 2 different steps of using polishing agents. When you get to this step, what you're going to do is use either a triply. Well, you're going to use a triply first. You can go with the old brown stuff, which is pretty aggressive, or you can go with the white diamond, which is a slightly safer, well, not safer, less aggressive form of triply. They both do the same thing, which is even a surface out and get rid of scratches and get it prepped for what would be your final polish. And I use Fabuluster. You'll hear a lot of people use different types of rouges. All of them have good stuff. Some of them have bad stuff. Fabuluster, I found, is the cleanest, easiest final polish that I've come across. It's easy to get along with, and it's easy to clean up after. All right, so triply, when you use a buff, be sure to write what it's being used for on the end. All right, that way you don't get them mixed up. And you're not trying to use a buff that's covered in triply for your final polish, and you can't figure out why it keeps putting scratches and taking them off at the same time. All right, so.
You have to degrease and clean in between the compounds because they're kind of greasy.
Yeah, if I was at home, I would put it into the ultrasonic. I'm not gonna make you guys sit through 10 minutes of ultrasonic. And you want to keep it moving the whole time. Triply will dig a gouge if you let it. It will take the corner off. I'm trying to be very, very careful on how hard I press. If I really press down and dig in with this, it will knock the corner off of this. And I'm trying very hard to keep the corner intact. But you can see it's coming up to a very nice polish just by the triply alone. So let's take a look and see what the Fabuluster will do.
Do you have to use both of those, the silicone and the AAA and all that? Or do you have to
Your
use-
order of operations when you're doing finishing. If you want to do it by the book, start with files, then sandpapers, silicone abrasives, and then polishing agents. If you want to skip a step, that's up to you. Should you want to do it by the book, that's and I would go through. I don't normally go to like a 120 sandpaper. I usually start about 240 or 220, and then work my way down to about a 1200. And then I would go to silicone abrasives. If you've gone all the way to a 1200 with the sandpaper, you can probably skip the first, the white silicone abrasives. It depends on whether or not you need to remove any more material or even things out. And I'll talk about blending surfaces here in just a second. But
Because I thought the mirror finish was nice with the silicone, and then you polished it. I'm like, man.
honestly,
better?
I would say most people these days do not really going to extremes on polishing. It does not seem like it's done outside of like a professional jewelry shop anymore. I don't see a lot of it. If you want your jewelry to really stand out, it's something because it's there's a little bit of pros and cons with it. People associate handmade jewelry with a more simple finish, and when they see something that looks like this or beyond it, they kind of associate it with mass-produced jewelry. So
Or more expensive.
yeah, so it can make you stand out because people aren't used to seeing that sort of thing, but at the same time, it may give people, I don't know.
Oh, that rings out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not
So,
one of a kind or.
yeah. Now, don't quote me. I haven't put a whole lot of thought into that, but that's kind of what it seems like to me.
Makes sense, yeah.
But there's a lot to be said for even if you choose not to do it, but knowing how to do it is important. And when you put the polishing agent on there, you don't need a lot. If you find that it's leaving behind big streaks of black when you go to polish, you've got way too much on there. And just take that same old junky file that you used from before, and then just and it makes a mess, but at the same time, it will clean off the edge. And then you can go back and that's enough.
That's really nice.
And it's satisfying to do. Now, when you put a satin finish over that, it gives it a glow, almost like a pearlescence,
Oh.
which we will do right about now.
And you forgot to mention you should be wearing a mask.
Well, yes, you're absolutely right. But it is very difficult to talk. So I will I will suck up a few fibers for your guys' sake. But yeah, you should wear, we have some masks over there that have a face shield on them. You can, if you don't want the face shield, like it's not the best with safety goggles, or if you're wearing prescription glasses, the breath tends to, it won't fog up the shield, but it fogs up your glasses. So you can pop the shield right off. The actual mask part is fantastic. As far as any of the masks that I've used, the disposable ones, those beat everything else, hands down.
Yeah, and real quick too, you know Georgie? No? Okay. Well, my friend Georgie, he's a jeweler over on Park Avenue, and literally, I mean, he polishes and finishes more than the steps that he describes, because, you know, his primary, you know, clientele are, you know, they want one-of-a-kind handmade pieces, and literally, I mean, he finishes more than what Adam's describing as far as the steps are concerned, just because his, you know, that's what he's aiming for. He wants something to have an absolute perfect finish, and that's what he was saying. Like, you know, some people are turned off by a perfect finish because they're expecting something handmade to not look as well, but Georgie's reputation is to making absolutely perfect pieces.
Yeah, if you're going for fine jewelry, you need to know how to do this. And he's absolutely right. I didn't want to freak you guys out with 20 steps.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, we could then talk about bringing in tumblers to do certain things. But
and again, if I also may interrupt too, is also one of the things that it will help you do too, is that it'll help you get things even. Because, you know, having a flat surface or a flat edge or something like that, yeah, you might be able to cut lines straight too, but then be able to sand it or finish it off into a straight line is basically just part of finishing.
yeah. All right, so we've got this beautiful mirror finish. Now let's add the scratches back.
What do you got there?
This is a satin buff, very small satin buff, which is actually starting to lose its buffness. And this is kind of like almost like a Brillo pad with some very nice abrasive attached to the fibers. And as the abrasive starts to wear off, it'll start to turn gray. And let's see if we've got enough. All right, I'm going to go one direction first. Went the opposite direction first. I should have kept it all one direction. All right. Go back this way. And there you go. And this is a very, very fine satin finish. I'll show you. Here's I'll show you a quick one with something.
Oh yeah, the directional.
Mm-hmm. I forgot to really give that a whole lot of thought. All right. Now, should you want to do a much heavier, this is a much heavier satin finish. It's a little tarnished at this point, but.
FDJ, this is Michelle. Can I help you?
At first, honestly, this real fine satin finish is not what I expected. I didn't really like it at first. I'm coming around though. This is more what I thought when I thought satin finish, and you can do this just with a, actually I should probably have a fresh one on here, but keep your directions the same, and that's just a sanding barrel, and depending on what type of sanding barrel you use, you can get different looks out of that.
Oh, you'd be surprised. What do you think? Have you ordered from us before?
What would the steps you take be after using a burr? Like,
Polish that back down.
yeah, like if you use this burr to
Well,
go over an area, it leaves quite
mhm.
some marks.
This guy.
Phone number still 612.
Okay, I want. Let's go with this guy. Okay. When you want to cut with a burr, like for this ring, okay, I made the band first, and then I cut the seat for this setting second. So I made the band first, got it the way I liked it, made it square, hammered it out, and then I drilled a hole right through the middle of the band, dead center. Okay. Okay, so that's my pilot hole. And to be honest, I would probably want to use maybe a couple different sizes of, well, let's see if that works. I have a feeling that that drill bit's pretty dull, but we'll save it. And the thing that I'm getting to is that you don't want to do large scale cutting with your burrs if you can help it. You know, get it as close as you can to where you need to be with drill bits and things like that. Okay, so that gets us close. And then that way you're not wearing your burr out trying to remove a ton of material. Drill bits do a much better job, and they're far less expensive than your burrs are. Yeah, for the most part.
So where that stone is sitting, that was just completely solid chunk of silver?
Yep.
Okay.
I went a little too far there. Well, I made the setting by itself, got that all situated. I did not cut the seat, but I got it the shape that I wanted. And then I drilled a hole through and then used a cone burr to come down. Now, it's not a perfect match, but you can see the wall of the setting is close to what the burr would be. So that gets me in the neighborhood. I drilled the hole first. Always use burr lube. That will help keep your burrs alive. Try not to do it all in one go. This will build up a lot of friction very, very fast. And that will ruin the steel on your burr. Give it just a little time to cool off in between. And if you need to use the burr to enlarge it more than you thought, you can always flip it over and come back at it. And then go back to the front and then put your bevel back in. if you see it or hear it start to squeak like that, then it's time for a fresh coat. Alright. And then that will do like a nice little beveled hole like that.
Did you make the band then cut a segment out for the?
Actually, I ground it out when, here, let me use this as an example. Think of this as the band. And I drilled the preliminary hole through the band, and I used my dividers to make sure it was nice and centered, and then I used a center punch to make my pilot divot. And then I drilled through, checked it again to make sure it was nice and even. It was actually a little bit off, so I put a like a very, see that guy? Okay, this is a cone burr and it cuts side to side. So I dropped that down through the pilot hole and then pulled over to the side until it was more dead center. Then I took the cone burr, dropped that down through the pilot hole, and then slowly started to grind. Then I would stop and check. And what I was looking for was the distance between that strip of metal right there and that right there, and making sure that it was constantly the same. And it would wander. And then what I would do is just basically press to one side, and it would make a little bit of an adjustment. And you'd see, now that's out of center, so I'd go back in and pull back the other direction and do that and check it. And when you're making adjustments like this to a piece of jewelry while you're working on it, stop every 5 seconds, pick up the stone, look at it, put it in there. You have your little dop stick so you can pick the stone up, place it in, check what you're doing. If you go on a long tear and start filing and grinding and doing everything for 10 minutes, then you go back and you realize that you've gone horribly wrong, and you know the hole's too large now. Now you have to add material back in, which is a nightmare. So, I mean, all the time. Stop, check out what you're doing, make sure you're going the right direction. You'll catch yourself filing the wrong side. That happens regularly. Or you flipped it over without realizing it, and you're now drilling into the back of it. And if you stop every 5 minutes to check what you're doing, then you catch yourself while it's still fixable. All right, so cone burrs, it's side-to-side material removal. A lot of people consider that, you know, oh, I'll use the tip and then I'll just drill through. The tip doesn't do any cutting. It's really only the side. So if you were to just, it doesn't go anywhere. All right, you need a hole to get you past the tip of it before it starts doing any cutting. All right. Setting burrs. Setting burrs have a very specific use. Okay, setting stones. Don't use these for stuff like what I was just doing. These should only be used to cut the very final seat. You want to get them there with anything but the setting burr if you can. So, like if you have bud burrs and anything that can make the cut before you get to the setting burr, great. That way, these only do one little touch, cut the seat, and then call it a day. Here's a bud burr. That's a very, very old, very gnarly bud burr. But that can be used kind of like the cone burr, just to make your seat, and then you come in with a setting burr, which is a specific angle to match the stone that you're trying to set, and then you just lightly cut the very end of it, and then you've got a nice place for your stone to sit down. All right. These are all wax burrs. Wax burrs tend to be burr that either has it's toothed, like that one. It's got almost like little cone teeth, and that keeps it from loading up with wax. But you use these just to carve wax into whatever shape you deem necessary.
You need to lubricate wax burrs, or they're self?
Nope. Matter of fact, you want to watch your speed. You want to keep those very, very slow. If you use them too fast, then the friction builds up and it starts to melt the wax. You're not gonna like that very much. All right, setting burrs, and I wanted to talk about these. I know that you do a lot of like soldered wire applications where you're soldering one piece of wire to something else. Something that can make a really nice look. That's what I want. Okay. So you're going to join one wire to another. Say you've soldered a jump ring, or it's a a larger shape, a flat piece of metal, something like that. Start with a diamond file or a needle file or a triangle file is what and you're going to notch. And we just want a simple notch to make sure that the bit stays where it's supposed to. And then we're going to take a cylinder crosscut burr, straight sides. It's meant to cut from side to side. So, and what we're going to do is make a notch, and these come in assorted sizes, so we want to make a notch the size of the wire that we're going to put in place. So we're going to use the piece that I just filed, and then we're going to lay that down in there right after I put some lube on it. There we go. Okay. And excuse me while I find my All right. So you made a notch, and then that drops right into place. Now, when you solder that in, it's a very finished look to it.
Yeah.
I used to, I'd cut the wire in half and I'd solder a piece to the top and a piece to the bottom, and then you'd spend hours trying to get it to look like it was meant to be there, and make it easy on yourself. Let's see what else we got. You can do the same thing with wheel burrs. They will cut notches into straight pieces. And one last thing that I really wanted to bring up. So I think I wanted to bring up what's called separating discs. These are wonderful and evil at the same time. And it is extremely important that you wear your safety goggles with these guys. All right. Here's a cutting disc. Austin, have you used these yet?
I used it once. I was making my own point burnisher,
Mm-hmm.
and I used one of these to cut off the tip of an old bird.
There you go.
That's what I created that big one, the metal beam and everything else.
Now, these are, they're about the same consistency as a potato chip. All right? Feel free to break that if you like. They, now, And what I want you to be aware of is, even though that is so brittle, but it will cut through just about anything. All right. Now be aware that when you do something like that, this is now burning hot on the end. So don't go, no, let's not do that. All right. These are fantastic tools. They do a great job of cutting through stuff. You can, cut through anything, and then you get a nice clean cut. You can use them to slice the ring shanks. You can use them to shape tools. But they will snap at the slightest. And I'm really serious that you need to wear your safety goggles with those. You can also use them to smooth. You can use them to texture. There's one more piece that I wanted to show you. I forgot to talk about those, didn't I? Yeah. Anybody wants to stay after and talk about bristle brushes and end brushes, that can be arranged. This last piece is kind of an old school texturing tool that I really don't see anybody use much anymore, but it's kind of neat. This is what's called a Florentine burr. And what it is a series of very, very small, very sharp ridges. They run basically horizontal around the burr, and and it's basically a bunch of little knives side by side. I gave it a little tiny bit of a bow when I cut it with the I need to bend it just a little bit when I use the shears to cut it. It made it so I can't quite get the flat surface that I need to use this thing effectively. All right, and then you can come back and you do cross hatching.